Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here this evening and giving up your time to attend our Women in STEM event. My name is Willow and I am one of the Partner Development Managers at InvestIN Education. It's so wonderful to see so many of you here getting involved with this event this evening. As the title explains, we are here to try and better encourage our aspiring young women students to pursue a career in the STEM industries. I have absolutely no doubt that we all share the same desire to ensure that our students have the access to pursue any career they choose, regardless of gender, ethnicity, or anything else that may stand in their way. For those of you who don't know too much about InvestIN, we are a London-based organisation and we aim to offer students a unique insight into their dream careers. We offer programmes for students aged 12 to 18 in over 28 different industries, so there really is something for everyone. To date, we have helped 45,000 students from over 100 different countries kickstart their career. But the reason, of course, we are here this evening is for you as teachers. We wanted to go beyond just supporting our students directly and provide support for you too, those people who are educating them day in and day out, to ensure that students are getting all the information they need regarding their futures from every angle. And we've kindly asked some fantastic female professionals to join us this evening to give some insider knowledge and equip them with the information needed to best support your students. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate it's been quite the manic academic year, and so I'm sure your evenings are very precious to you all. I assure you, although I am quite biased, that you are in for a fantastic evening. We're going to discuss ways in which we can change the narrative, open up opportunities, and inspire more women into these future-proof fields. So just to give you a brief overview of what the evening is looking like, after a short introduction from me, I'm going to pass you over to our guest speaker of this evening, Ella Podmore, who will be talking us through why women in STEM are so important and how we can drive that female workforce forward. We'll finish up with a section of key takeaways for you and then finally end with a panel Q&A, which will be your chance to ask our professionals those burning questions that you may have. We will also be sending around the slides at the end and we'll make a recording available. So don't worry if you encounter any of those pesky technical issues or if you wish to reflect on all this information at a later date. So I'm thrilled to introduce our exciting and inspiring professionals who will be here this evening. We have Ella Podmore, who is the Young Female Engineer of the Year and who will be hosting the majority of the evening. Then we have Reacher, Charlotte and Deepa joining us to add their expert opinions, experiences and insights from all four corners of STEM. And to keep you all involved this evening, we're going to make it interactive by using the Q&A and polling app Slido. To participate, if you haven't done so before, you simply need to pick up your phone, open the web browser and head to slido.com. There you can insert the event code, which is quite simply Women in STEM. Once you're logged in, you will see two tabs. One has a live Q&A section where you can submit questions at any time. We would encourage you to do this throughout this evening and we can either respond there and then or we can save them for the panel at the end. So if anything comes to mind, please don't hesitate to utilise this. On the right-hand side is where polls will appear live and you'll see them as we use them throughout the evening. So just to ease you all into it, I want to start off with a couple of questions. Where exactly are you logging in from today? Okay, amazing. Wow, China. It's great to see people from all over the country in the UK and further afield as well. And what are your roles in the schools that you are from? Okay, amazing. Well, it's great to see such a variety of you from all corners of the education sphere. And hopefully you'll all find this evening very, very useful, regardless of the subject that you cover, or whether you're a careers lead or any other teacher at the school. And you will also see at the bottom of your screen on Zoom that we have a hands up function. I'm sure you're all Zoom experts by now, so you're very familiar with this. But during this evening, and particularly in the Q&A at the end, we want to give you the chance to virtually raise your hand, and we can invite you to unmute your microphones and speak with us here today. Just to test this, could we ask you all to raise your hands just to see how many of you are with us? Okay, amazing. Lots of hands shooting up there. It's great to see that you're all engaging already, and I look forward to hearing from you throughout the rest of the evening. So we thought a great place to start would be to just simply start with the basics. STEM has become a buzzword in education, but what actually is it? Well, at its core, STEM is simply the prospect of educating students in 4 specific disciplines: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And the aim is just to combine all 4 elements of this into an interdisciplinary and applied approach, so that we can equip students with the knowledge and tools required to consider many different industries. It is undeniable that STEM underpins a wide range of sectors, from healthcare through to aviation, and it is becoming an ever more important field. With the rise of technology, which has been accelerated because of the pandemic, the demand for these industries is definitely in existence. In the UK alone, 120,000 students would need to be graduating in STEM jobs to help meet the demand. And this is not just happening in the UK, but further afield as well. Outside of the UK, workforce projections for 2018 by the US Department of Labour showed that 9 out of 10 of those fastest growing occupations that ask for a degree require significant scientific or mathematical training. And it's also an area with strong financial prospects. The average STEM job pays £20 to £30 an hour compared to the 12 to 17 of any other job. And this really consolidates why the government has been so keen to push recently those technical qualifications, as evidenced in the Skills Bill and the Skills White Paper. So why are we here? Well, you would think with the drive and appeal of all of these STEM careers that women would be jumping at the chance to pursue a career in this field. And whilst participation is on the rise, it's just simply not enough. In terms of gender, it's just not a level playing field. I've popped up on the screen here some statistics that really shocked me. As recently as 2019, 1 out of 10 engineers are female. It's quite clear to see that something needs to change. But we didn't want to spend too much time dwelling on those statistics. It's important to recognise that they are in existence so that we know where we are, so that we know where we're going. It is easy for students and adults alike to get bogged down by these negative numbers, but we shouldn't be spending too much time highlighting or emphasising these barriers in case it could exacerbate an already reluctant student in thinking that it's not the route to take. We should focus on highlighting that it's not a hindrance being a woman. Take these barriers and break them down until they're no longer existing. With this in mind, our main aims of this evening are to highlight ways to encourage, inspire, and raise awareness as to why women are so essential. We want to foster that positive view, and our ultimate goal is to help change that negative narrative. And that's exactly what Ella is here to discuss in more detail now. And I am absolutely delighted to welcome her for this section of the presentation.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Willow. If we can move on to the next slide, I will briefly introduce myself and talk about what we're going to go over in the session tonight. So next slide, please. My name is Ella Podmore and I am a materials engineer by trade. I work for the supercar brand called McLaren Automotive. I have been in industry about 4 years now. We're going to touch upon my pathway in and what kind of interesting points that I want to mention about placements, teacher influence and stuff like that along the way. I've been part of InvestIN Young Engineer program for about 2.5 years and have worked with the amazing students that we get on this program, and hopefully talk about ways that this can encourage participation and boost women in STEM altogether. But along my journey, I've basically been involved in STEM for a very long time. I'm the lead STEM ambassador for McLaren Automotive. I had a really awesome time being a judge on the Blue Peter competition that McLaren ran about design your supercar. And of course, I've been through the education system myself. So I have quite a large sort of depth of what I believe women in STEM is, what we should be talking to students about, how we address it, how we encourage it, and also how we should change that narrative for the better. Working in a very male-dominated industry, I like to hope that I can shed an insight on why we can let it motivate girls getting into STEM rather than hinder them from applying. So, next slide, please. I'm going to quickly talk to you about my pathway into where I've got to today. And the reason I want to do this is because there are a couple of things that I want to mention about teachers influencing me on my particular subject choice and also placement years as well. So when I was at school, I was very into the sciences. I loved chemistry, maths, physics, and IT. Those were my A-level subjects. And I knew I wanted to be an engineer because I wanted to solve problems. And I was lucky that I understood that quite early on, that I wanted to fix things. I wanted to make a world a better place. So I wanted to be an engineer. However, I loved chemistry. Chemistry was my science, and whether it be influenced by stereotypes or whether people around me sort of said, oh, well, you know, engineers are in boiler suits. They work in garages, Ella. I don't think that's a bit of you. But actually, it took a very influential science teacher to sort of help me along the way and say, if you like chemistry, of course you can be an engineer. There are so many different pathways an engineer can take. And she actually narrowed it down to me through discussions. We had lots of little catch-ups, and she narrowed it down to me for materials and chemical engineering. And based on that, I went on 2 open days, and materials engineering blew my mind. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I have so much respect and thanks to give to her about helping me choose that particular pathway. And that's what I went on to study at University of Manchester. I did 4 years there. I got a master's in engineering, and I had the ability to do an industrial placement year. Now, this I believe to be relatively important. Quite a few engineering degrees offer this, and the reason I bring it up today is because we want to encourage people to take industrial placement years. About 1/3 of all people on engineering courses at university go on these industrial placement years, and 45% of the people who go on these placements are employed by the company that they go on in placements with. And I find it to be hugely beneficial because what you're able to do is gain an insight into industry. So I did my industrial placement year on the 3rd year of my degree, and I wrote a letter to McLaren. So I love supercars. I watched them on Top Gear. I thought they were glamorous, fast, really, really cool. I wanted to work for a particular brand like them. So long story, I wrote them a letter. They didn't employ materials engineers, but I managed to convince them. And so I spent 12 months there on my 3rd year of my degree. And what that gave me was a fantastic insight into industry, but also an idea of what kind of problems the automotive industry were battling with. And once I gained that insight, I was able to gain an understanding of what I should study on my thesis topic. Knowing that this thesis topic is going to make me a very attractive candidate when I graduate university, I said to McLaren, if I come up with a solution for this particular problem that I know you're suffering with, can you offer me a job? And that's exactly what they did. They created the Department of Materials Engineering for me. I've been back there for about 3 years now, and I'm still running the department in the fault analysis division of the company. So industrial placement years are key, and we should look to advertising these in a matter of staff retention for getting females involved in STEM. It's a great way to let them experience what STEM's about, let them experience what it's like to be in industry. If they try it and they don't like it, that's up to them. But it can be a great way of having an insight without taking it to job offer or no job offer. So that was my pathway. If we go on to the next slide, please. So what do I do at McLaren? So I'm a materials engineer by trade. Like I said, I work in the fault analysis division. So I spend the majority of my time on microscopes, working in laboratories, looking at really, really small things, seeing how McLaren can make those improvements. And basically the image, the background image on the right there is what I look on a day-to-day basis. We're looking at tiny, tiny atoms. How can McLaren make their cars go faster? How can we make sure that the components are going to withstand in plus 40 degrees heat and maybe minus 20 degrees coldness? And these are the kind of things that I analyze off development cars. We often plan our production vehicles 2 or 3 years in advance. And it's my job to basically ensure that all of our new components are up to scratch performance wise. And also if a customer wants them in a particular jazzy color, if they want them coated in 24 karat gold, it would be my job to make sure that those don't fail any region below our expected performance. So I have a lovely balance. I absolutely love my work in the lab. I get to drive the fast cars. I get to work on microscopes. I get to geek out on all the great things that materials have to offer. And so that's a little insight of what I do as a materials engineer. Of course, I'm biased, but it's a fantastic career pathway to tell all your students about. Next slide, please. So that may have been what you might have expected an engineer does, but what we're here to talk about is to shred the stereotypes. So not all engineers do that boiler suit garage work. Of course, there are some of them out there, but mainly what I do is, yes, I'm working in the lab, but I also do all of this really awesome stuff. And the idea is that we want to shred the stereotype. We want to remove the stigma associated with engineering and showcase all these incredible opportunities that you get to do as a woman in STEM. So yes, there may be gender disparity in the industry. Yes, I may be finding myself to be the only woman in the room about 99% of the time. But because of that, I've had some fantastic opportunities offered to me, whether it be starring in a fictional novel of a HarperCollins educational book, whether it be invited to Grand Prix to talk about women in tech. These are all opportunities that have been offered to me because I'm a woman. However, I don't deem these as a negative thing. I encourage them. I think it's fantastic. Off the back of all these opportunities, I've had some really great career progressions, and I was fortunate enough to win Young Women Engineer of the Year. And I know that's down to the work that I do with STEM, Blue Peter, all the extracurricular activities that make it so important. And this is really worthwhile for me. I love going to schools to talk about my particular division of engineering. I love hearing the refreshing ideas and shredding the stereotypes for those students. So this is the kind of positive, exciting image that we want to get across to our students today, because this is what women in STEM do. Next slide, please. And we're going to go to another Slido. So can you please answer the question, why does the topic of women in STEM matter to you? So why are you attending this event today? Why is it important? What do you feel that you've got to give to women in STEM? Equality. Absolutely. So there are so many reasons why we need to encourage participation, visibility, but there are two different sides to it. So we want to, of course, make sure that we have role models, and we want to encourage girls to apply these particular industries. But there's also a corporate business side of it as well that we're going to go on to discuss, that it's essential that we diversify the workforce. It's good for companies to get that diversity in the company, and it's something we're going to discuss a little bit later on. Breaking glass ceilings. I love this, guys. We're all on the right right pathway here. Role models, opportunity, fulfillment to bridge the gender gap. Fantastic. I can't wait for the questions later. Next slide, please. So Willow introduced us to the idea that we've got to change the narrative. And this is something, when InvestIN approached me about this particular event, I do a lot of women in STEM events, don't get me wrong, but changing the narrative was something that I really wanted to hear more about. So it is quite often associated with a negative stigma, the fact that there aren't many females in STEM. And what I want you guys to take away today is that we should actually be encouraging girls and motivating them to this gender gap, because that means so many opportunities are going to come their way in terms of filling positions, but also the excitement of the expansion of engineering. So if we load the points up on this slide, please. But first one, not all barriers should be expressed as negative ones. This is something I've discussed on my Shredding Stereotype page. This isn't necessarily what you believe engineers do, yet I get to do all these fantastic events because I'm a woman in STEM, because there aren't many of me. McLaren send me to all these fantastic Goodwood Festival of Speeds, Grand Prix, and I deem that as an absolute positive, and we should aim for people to fill those gaps in order to have the best personal development. Second point, demonstrate what role models there are in the industry. So this is a really key point that we're going to discuss in our key takeaways later. So increasing that visibility. Yes, we want to motivate people to fulfill these positions, but that's going to be so much easier when we talk about people who look like them, speak like them, and someone that's relatable for these girls to want to apply to that. So always really, really key to highlight what role models are there in the industry already. Third point, reason for change should be talked about positively. Again, we want to excite people into the industry. We don't want to put them off. And there are lots of examples later on in the presentation as to why potentially girls think like that. Next slide, please. So we've talked about why we've got to encourage girls to fill these positions, but on the corporate side of things, being involved in a business in the automotive industry, there is actually a genuine need on why we need to diversify this workplace. We go on to the next slide. We're going to start this section off with another Slido. So I know this may seem like I'm generalizing, but what skills do you think women bring to the table? There's absolutely no secret. If you submit your Slido answers, please, it's no secret that females and males think differently. I am more often than not the only woman in the room, and I know for a fact that I'm thinking very, very differently to my male colleagues, but that is such a positive, and it's really important when you're an engineer or working in STEM problem solving. If you have different ways of getting to the answer, or different answers to consider, that's going to make the business overall better. So what have we got here? Patience, collaboration, organization skills, absolutely. Attention to detail. This is all fantastic. And this is what we need to encourage. So when girls are looking in the classroom and probably watching videos and thinking that they don't actually think like the person on the screen or the YouTube video that they're watching, actually, we want to encourage that the unique skills that they have is going to make them an even better engineer. And it's that changing the narrative, making sure that we teach girls that engineering is a skill set. It's not a character trait, for example. You're not going to have to change yourself to fit or to become an engineer. It's just a skill set you learn, and embracing your individuality is only going to make you a better engineer. Creative thinking, leadership, time to think, balance, persistent intuition, love it. Let's go on to the next slide, please. And we load up all the points. Thank you. So why do we need women? From a business point of view, we generalize, but of course this can be different from every different person, but women are proven to use more parrot language. So we're quite expressive in terms of the way that we communicate, and can be more emotive as well. So I know for a fact that when I'm doing my public speaking, that I often use my hands a lot, probably a little bit too much, but I am quite expressive, and I know that communication is actually something that I like to pride myself on, and things that my managers have picked up previously. And this is proven to become maybe a little bit more easier to women. Something on this as well is that I have noticed that women are actually more likely to check in with their managers or ask for help in the workplace. And this is something we should be encouraging in the classroom. It's no secret to you guys that girls can be a little bit more shy than boys when in a classroom environment at a young age. So we want to encourage participation, encourage question asking, and also asking for help, because if I'm about to make £1 million decision at McLaren, I want to make sure that that gets checked. And they really want that as well. So we want to encourage that kind of behavior. It's not a negative, it's an absolute positive. Second point, bring in unique skills. Again, this may sound like I'm generalizing, but women are proven to be great at multitasking, great at organization. I'm a list girl, and I thought that it was going to hinder me because I have to have a list for everything. But actually, that amount of organization meant that as soon as I joined the company, that I was taking minute notes, for example. And as soon as I was in charge of minute notes, people were asking me about different tasks. And when they were asking me about different tasks, I quickly went into project management around engineering reviews as well. So that's kind of how it escalated off my organization skills. So we must encourage that. Third type. Industries are breaking down stereotypes and they want to diversify for best results. So we're going to talk about this a little more about on the next slide, sorry. But engineering is changing. We are no longer staying in our lanes of automotive engineers and mechanical engineers work for an automotive sector, or aerospace engineers work for an aerospace company. The lines are being blurred, and I think that's a fantastic opportunity that we should showcase to the classroom as well. Fourth point, of course, we need women for role models for aspiring engineers to get into the industry. This is an absolute given, but it's important because we want to showcase what kind of role models there currently are, and we need more women in the industry to do that. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about a changing industry. Now, I find this quite interesting because it's quite current, especially to me in the automotive industry going through the pandemic. I think there have been significant shifts in the work culture and the traditional elements associated around engineering firms. And this is only a positive for women in STEM. So I touched upon this on the last slide, but basically what I have found is that industries are no longer being in their traditional lanes. So when I joined the company, for example, at McLaren, they only employed mechanical and automotive engineers because they make cars, and that's the kind of engineer that we need. When actually 4 years down the line, of course, they employed me as a materials engineer. I've got my own department now because they realized that kind of skill set is quite important to diversify the problem solving techniques, for example. But also, as technology is changing, cars are now moving towards battery technologies. Our latest car, the Artura that we've launched, is completely governed by software. So we've employed huge teams of software engineers, coding engineers that necessarily wouldn't have applied to an automotive company. Now, as a young girl, I was always taught that if you wanted to work for a supercar company, you had to be obsessed with cars, you had to know the ins and outs of a car, you had to be comfortable with working in a garage, for example. That is not the case. I love the glamorous side of F1. I love the fact that our cars, McLaren cars, were so cool. The P1 was my favorite car, but I thought, oh, I'm not going to be working in a boiler suit. I want to work in a lab. And times are changing and stereotypes are being removed from these types of industries. And it's really important that we enforce that. Second point. So when involved in manufacturing, and again, I'm sorry, I'll keep relating it back to the automotive industry or manufacturing in general, but of course, that's where I work. When companies are wanting to apply their product to a greater client base, of course, they're wanting to diversify their own workforce, because how are they going to market a supercar if it hasn't been thought about, but market a supercar, sorry, for a female customer if it hasn't been thought about by female engineers, or you have that diversification in the workforce. Classic example of this, a few years ago, McLaren never designed a supercar around the female ergonomic body shape. And so when I joined, I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. We have so many female customers. So it wasn't long before they were sort of orientating the screen in a different way, or having adjustable heights for the pedals and the steering wheel and stuff. And this was because of females in the workforce, and this obviously increased the client base that they could sell the cars to. So it's in the company's best interest to diversify the people that are working there. And lastly, the last point, the pandemic. So this is a really interesting one that we have only sort of experienced after COVID. Now, work flexibility in the automotive industry wasn't really a thing before the COVID happened. We were governed by traditional shift patterns, by manufacturing. We had to sort of orientate ourselves around the product, and it was always a clock in, clock out, you had to be on site sort of thing. However, flexibility comes now that we have been working from home. These companies know we can work from home, that we should see greater flexibility going forwards. It's something McLaren is definitely considering. And when we're considering like maternity leave and flexibility for women in STEM as they get older, if that's the kind of path they want to go down, then having that work flexibility, working from home, is going to encourage female staff retention. And that's only a positive thing going forward. So I'm excited to see what happens with traditional supercar brands such as McLaren after the pandemic, whether it's a thing that they'll keep. I'm sure it will be. Next slide, please. Future prospects. So how are we going to keep the girls excited? We talked about ways that we can get them involved and how we can capture their attention, but how are we going to excite them to make them want to apply to a STEM role? So what opportunities out there? We've kind of touched upon this, the blurring of the lines of these traditional engineering companies. So we're in what we call the fourth revolution of a digital revolution, which means that car companies are no longer occupied by purely car people. We've got electronics, battery technology, ergonomics, autonomous technology. The lines are being blurred, and this should mean that more people can apply to the likes of what was originally tarnished as a masculine supercar energy brand. We're now seeing a huge increase in women applying for product development roles, and that's only a good thing for the company. So where do you hope to see women in the future? Of course, I expect to see women representing every industry with key players on executive boards. So this is what I would like to see. I think we need guidance from the top down in terms of leadership. And I'm excited to sort of see more women occupying these executive roles, because that's only going to encourage people to apply to those types of industries. And thirdly, are you excited about the future? Yes, I believe that the point that we're in at the moment for engineering in the UK, science in the UK, is a really exciting one, and we have to broadcast this in terms of fun, exciting opportunities for women in the classroom. Next slide, please. So we're going to summarize with a few key takeaway points that you guys can go away and apply in the classroom. So we are going to touch upon how we can change the narrative, encourage female participation, increase the visibility of the women that are doing fantastic jobs out there in STEM already, and open up opportunities as well. So if we go on to the next slide and discuss the first one, changing the narrative. So particular problem, for example, 50% of high achieving girls said that they worry about physics because it will be difficult, and they worry about getting the poor grades. So where has the stereotype of physics being difficult come from? Physics and science should be applicable to absolutely everyone. The breadth and the sheer depth of engineering roles and careers that are out there doesn't mean that every single person is going to excel at the exact same thing. But we need to change the narrative of why people think like that. So we want to come from a position of positivity. We talked about not many women being involved in engineering and in physics, but imagine when you get this degree, imagine where you can go on to do, where the things you can go on to talk about, you can get great exposure in the company. We want to teach girls that yes, physics may have this stigma, but if you go on to do it, there will be a spotlight on you, but you must use that to motivate you. Encourage students to accept the barriers and then explore how they can use them to their advantage. When we talked and looked at that slide of all the different opportunities and events that I've been involved in, none of those events would have been offered to me if I wasn't a female in STEM. Now, I consider that to be hugely a positive movement, because I got myself out there. It was great exposure. I proved everyone wrong, thinking, oh, she's just got this position because she's she's a woman, actually I can do it better than all of you. And that spotlight needs to be used to motivate these students as well. Next slide, please. Encourage female participation. So we mentioned earlier that at a certain age, it can be seen that girls can be more shy in the classroom than boys. And I have noticed this, being a STEM ambassador, I frequently travel to schools, career fairs, university talks and stuff like that. And I do notice that boys can be more forthcoming with their questions. Now, what I started to introduce when I was going to schools was having female-only groups, along with all the different classroom sessions that I took, to talk about career progression, questions and development and stuff like that. And by doing that, it created a more comfortable environment for them to come forward, ask questions about what it was like to be a woman in this particular type of industry, which they didn't feel was appropriate when we were in a mixed situation. And various other sort of probably more personal questions that are important to talk about, because once they realize it's not actually as bad as they believe it to be or big up in their head, they're more likely to apply to it as well. So female only sessions, lunchtime clubs. We need to encourage students to actively research their areas of interest to them and get them excited about their field based on their own research. So this was something my school encouraged me to do hugely, with that chemistry teacher telling me that, of course you could be an engineer. Why don't you go off and research materials and chemical engineering? And once I had that sort of those two topics on my plate, I went off to research what they were about. And then I got so excited. There's so much out there at the moment in terms of the internet, YouTube, TED Talks. Like, we should be giving them a pathway to research this by themselves and then realize that actually, no, this is something I should get excited about. But it starts with female participation. And I think these probably female only groups or lunchtime sessions or smaller groups, for example, where you can have discussions and project work is definitely going to help that. Next slide, please. Increase visibility. So the problem, only 22% of students interviewed could name a famous female working in technology. Now, yes, there aren't many of them out there, but there are some incredible women out there doing incredible things in STEM. And I think back to when I was sitting in my IT class, I remember my IT teacher never said anything, but he simply put up some posters of women in tech. We had the CEO of Yahoo, Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook and stuff like that. And he put these posters on the wall and he didn't really say anything. He just let us read them in our own time. And just having them up there, I remember, you know, when you're in the classroom doing your coursework or you're answering quiz questions or you're just there sort of catching up on your homework, for example, I remember just looking up at these posters and thinking, oh my gosh, they were so cool. They were young, they were relatable, they were in tech, which I knew about. They were talking about YouTube, and I spent ages on YouTube. I know what that is. I want to aim for that. And that was so inspiring to me because he had increased the visibility of what women are doing out there. I felt like I wanted to put my name next to theirs on the wall. And that all comes with increasing of visibility. And like I said, these students are so in touch with social media, and if you give them a person to research or someone in a field who's just done something incredible, the first female astronaut, whatever it may be, they will go on and research that. And we want to give them these nuggets of information for them to go and research and get inspired by. So increase your own awareness of these role models, make sure that we're distributing that throughout the classrooms, and also be consciously aware of the diversity of your picking outside speakers based on gender, ethnicity, job role. By bringing in a huge variety, you're going to appeal to a lot more students and potentially inspire them to get into it. And that's a great thing. Next slide, please. Last key takeaway point is open up opportunities. So of course, the best one we can talk about are the InvestIN programs. I do so many of these programs, and the caliber of students that we get on InvestIN is fantastic. I think also based on the collection of age ranges that we've got, it allows people to feel comfortable, or the students to feel comfortable in their groups, and we get fantastic female participation on the Young Engineer program that I'm a part of. But of course, It is still a problem. We heard about the statistics at the beginning. Only 24% of the STEM workforce are female. And how can we increase this? By showing what opportunities there are currently out there. So in programs like InvestIN, we should encourage them to experience what engineering is like. If you are interested in STEM, why don't you take this open day? Why don't you take this course? Coursera, Khan Academy, there are so many things online that you can quickly pick up and see whether it's applicable to you. And we want to encourage them to go out and experience that, because they will soon learn that there are females out there doing incredible things, and it will hopefully motivate them to find out what their passion is. So encourage extracurricular activities and hobbies that focus on enhancing these key skills that will set women apart. So this is actually quite a good point. So as a female in STEM, I do get to go to these fantastic events and do amazing things. And the extracurricular activities that I did at the time, I found really helped. So I was really keen on public speaking. I did that throughout school. And so when I was taken to all these events, I wasn't worried about going up and speaking on a stage, and that really helped me and got my name out there and my exposure. And I'm certain that helped me with the award. But also looking at team sports and music and art and all these additional hobbies, that's always really important to encourage students to have from a mental health point of view, to keep them focused and relaxed during exam times and stuff, but also the soft skills that come alongside that. If we encourage female STEM students and engineering students to keep up their extracurricular activities, that's teaching them soft skills that are going to be really, really useful when they're put into industry, because they're going to be in a spotlight. Again, not a negative thing, a positive thing, that they can use those soft skills to absolutely shine a light on what they're doing and use that spotlight to their advantage. And next slide, please. We are going to finish on a Slido question. So going forward, what are your plans for encouraging young women into STEM industries? If you guys had any thoughts throughout that presentation about how you're going to increase female participation, or any idea on classroom sessions, after school sessions, put them in this now. I think it will be really good going into the Q&A session afterwards to have a discussion about what kind of things that we can do to increase visibility and increase female participation, and also demonstrate that you guys are giving off opportunities as well. So women in science displays in classrooms. Yes, we need posters. We need to show actual physical evidence that they can go away, look up on Twitter, look up on Instagram, and be inspired by these females in the classroom. Some fantastic ideas there. And I think we're going to go into the Q&A session.
Yeah, really some amazing answers there. It's so great to see that so many of you have picked up on all the points that Ella's raised there. And thanks so much, Ella. That was so insightful. Just before we pop to the Q&A, for those of you who might have missed the start, if you want to head to slido.com, you simply need to type it into your web browser on a phone. You can just enter the hashtag Women in STEM, and you can start to submit questions for the Q&A, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But just before we do, and whilst those questions come through, I just wanted to go over a few useful resources that you might be able to use over the coming months. So we actually have carefully curated a teacher resource pack that you can send directly to your students, and will be readily available to download on our website after this session, and we will also send it to you in our follow-up. The aim of this is to provide you with a guide that you can use in the classroom, with a host of information regarding the topic, activities to help engage your students, and provide ways to encourage that positive narrative. It also actually includes a research task to allow your students to search for role models and personally get excited about any future prospects. We know that with the removal of exams for year 11 and 13, you might be looking for ways to engage those students as they hang around, and we wanted to help with that. In terms of further resources, I've added some websites, podcasts, and Twitter accounts. With summer approaching, you could perhaps encourage your students to pick a podcast whilst on that long drive to Cornwall or Wales for the English holiday that we've got to inevitably have, and it could inspire them as they go. And so I hope you found this evening's event insightful so far. And if you have, we do actually have some other teacher events coming up. As you can see on the screen, we have another career-focused event on the 1st of July around psychology. And if you're not already a partner school, we'll have a session on the 30th of June specifically detailing our cost-free partner school initiative. If you've enjoyed this evening so far and would like even more career support, a partnership with ourselves entitles you to fully funded bursary places, discounts for your students to all our programs, and bespoke presentations on employability skills for your students. And then come the autumn term, we will have even more events taking place like this one. And we'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts on what you'd like to see. You'll be able to submit your suggestions in Slido when we launch some feedback at the end. And whilst those questions are still coming through, I just wanted to take a chance to remind you of the opportunities available for students this summer and through to the autumn term. I'm pleased to say that live online and in-person programs are available this summer, but places are of course limited. So if you think your students would be interested, please get them to book as soon as possible. And then come the autumn term, I'm excited to say that there are 8 more industries being added to our repertoire. And this is actually following feedback from events like this one. So we now have programs like Young Sports Professional and Young Video Game Designer. It's also worth mentioning that next academic year, we will be expanding to locations outside of London too. I saw some of you tuning in from Manchester, and we have programs in that city as well as Birmingham, Bristol and Edinburgh too. And for those of you further afield, we do have programs in New York, Dubai, Singapore and Hong Kong too. Across our programs, we aim to motivate students by giving them a glimpse of their dream career and the steps required to get there. All of these are hosted by top professionals in their field who live and breathe that career every day. And we encourage students to take ownership with hands-on activities, networking opportunities, and industry-specific career coaching. And now I want to invite and introduce our professionals to join the Q&A section. Like I said, you can submit any questions via Slido. And do feel free to direct questions at any one of our fantastic panelists. So you've all heard a bit from Ella. So I was just wondering if we could quickly go round and explain all of our amazing women on this evening. Charlotte, I can see you've got your camera on. Would you like to start us off by just telling us a little bit about you?
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte Robinson. So I work in the food industry in research and development. So basically designing the biscuits and snacks that you eat on a daily basis. So understanding the science and the chemistry and the engineering that goes into making those. I studied biochemistry at university and then managed to kind of combine my love for science and food into the career that I'm doing today.
Brilliant. That's so great. And Richa, do you want to give a bit of a background about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Richa. I work in cybersecurity. So I think most people think of me as somebody with a hoodie sat on the other end trying to catch kind of the bad guys on the internet. Some of what I do, not all of it. I come from a background in engineering, but I also spent some time doing accounting. So I'm a financial auditor, and I've just taken a bit of leap from STEM to do law now. So hopefully I've got a little more rounded experience. That's me.
That's fantastic. Such a great background. Thanks, Richa. And Deepa, I can see you over there. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So I'm Deepa. I'm a dentist. I graduated in Bristol studying dentistry. Thereafter, I spent a couple of years in community dentistry, so treating patients with special needs and patients in prison. Then I went and did a year in hospital. So I spent a year with oral and maxillofacial patients and patients who come in with facial trauma and cancer patients. And then I did an MSc in restorative dental practice, and I currently work as a dental associate, and I'm a practice owner, and I'm also a dental foundation dentist trainer, and I teach facial aesthetics, so Botox and dermal fillers as well. So that's me.
Wow, amazing. I feel a bit inadequate amongst all you amazing women. But I just wanted to start then just with a question to start us off. Richa, I wondered if I could come to you. How would you might think we could increase that visibility and encourage that female participation in our STEM careers?
To be honest, I think Ella has covered so many of those, but I probably will reiterate some, which I think for me is probably the most important one. I think it's the awareness. You know, it's the whole thing about being able to give information, give the right information, and not kind of create kind of a negative barrier to it, right? It's all about, in my way, it's all about the positive reinforcements. So I think as much as what we can do in order to give information, spread awareness, and not kind of reiterate so much kind of the negatives that have been in the past, but think more about the future and kind of a barrier-free sort of no, glass ceiling type of future. That'd be great, I think.
Yeah, it would definitely be amazing if we could get to a point where all of those barriers have gone completely and all those opportunities are equal. And Deepa, I just wondered if I could ask you what you think students could be doing outside of school to kind of encourage that participation in the STEM industries.
I think that it's just being aware of more of the local communities, taking more of an interest. So, students you can always go and volunteer on the weekends. I know there's an age in which you can start working, but it's just also talking to other people. And like, for example, I'm a dentist, and so a lot of my patients, some of them are young children, and they ask me about my profession. And again, it's just raising, like, you were saying earlier, it's just raising awareness about the positives of every career. Like, one would look at a dentist and think it's the most terrifying profession, and two, why would anybody want to look down somebody's mouth? But it's a whole, like, which is true, but it's just, there's so much more to it, which nobody really knows about unless you really, research the subject. So again, it's just, reaching out to local communities, and also I think more so in school, like hosting events and hosting more sort of career day events, just to get a real insight into what each career is about.
Yeah, amazing. I think that's so important. It's about, encouraging that work experience, and perhaps over the summer, whilst they have opportunities to volunteer, like you said, it's a great time to kind of take advantage of all of those opportunities. And did anyone have anything they wanted to add to that question at all?
Yeah, I think just to add on to that as well, like the world of STEM and science is the same as any other career, and there's brilliant opportunities to kind of become leaders in industry. So I think it's as important as any career to get those experiences early on. If you can stand out and have amazing communication, have great teamwork, have brilliant examples of that, then on top of kind of the science element, I think that's absolutely priceless. I think it's like, to get the best opportunities, that's really important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we had actually one of the teachers that are here today asked whether, when was the right time to actually introduce STEM opportunities to our students. And I think you're quite right. There's never, and you can't be too early with these opportunities. The earlier, expose these students to what's out there in the STEM industry, the better it will be.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. And Ella, I know we've heard quite a lot from you, but I feel like I've given your voice a little bit of a rest now. Someone was asking, what has been your biggest challenge in your career, and how can you kind of positively reflect on that now, which I think is such a great question.
Yeah, it is a good question. I had a bit of a double whammy that when entering McLaren, about having quite a spotlight on me when I came into the company. So yes, women engineer, there weren't many of us when I started, bit of a spotlight. and then the only materials engineer in the company as well. So that was an increased spotlight. I was fresh out of university. I had to tell a team of 400, whatever, how many engineers there were, to sort of, make wise material choices. That was really difficult. And I think, it is no secret that when you're a woman going into this industry, you need people to sort of treat you just like treat anyone else. But of course, when you're the only woman in the room, you do have barriers and complications to that. So I did find it really difficult at the beginning, being a fresh graduate, having these two spotlights on me, making people listen to me about what kind of material issues and experiments that I've done. But in a wonderful kind of way, we're in STEM, we're in engineering, we're involved with science, and it wasn't about my opinion versus them. They didn't have to listen to a young graduate who came out of school thinking that she knew everything. I was just like, I'll go and prove it in the lab. And it took a long time for all of my reports to sort of build accreditation and people say, actually, she knows what she's talking about. But I had science to fall back on. And I think we should encourage girls that data doesn't lie. Like you shouldn't worry about sort of being, everyone's going to hate me, it's going to be like a personal attack. It's actually, no, go and do your thing, deliver the science. And that's kind of how I built up that trust and confidence, and overcoming those hurdles of being, she doesn't know much, she's here because she's a woman, sort of thing. So I used that, and that was probably the biggest challenge entering a workforce with that background.
And look at you now. You're doing great. Winning awards, but it just goes to show that if you have the confidence to just push and go into that industry and ask questions, that you can actually achieve anything you really want to. Did anyone else want to add to that challenge and how you positively might reflect on that now, that question?
So I think for me, it sounds like completely resonates exactly what Ella's saying, kind of as a new graduate going into a factory and saying, right, this is the recipe, you're going to run down this line, which had never been done before. And kind of people, exactly like you say, Ella, saying, well, why should we listen to you? And I think the thing that really helped me is having that network of kind of women around me, where even not necessarily in STEM. So I think the idea of mentorship and coaches and using networks like this for people to reach out to right from the outset, to actually say, what you're talking about, kind of go back in that room and tell them what you think, I think makes a huge difference also to support that, to have the confidence right at the beginning of your career.
Absolutely. And just inspiring confidence in each other. It's such a great thing to be doing.
And I think I agree with everything Ella and Charlotte are saying. And it, again, resonating with what they're saying is that I think my biggest barrier is that I've always had low confidence. And I went to a school that was highly competitive. Everybody was very academic and there was a lot of pressure. And, whilst I worked very hard, I wasn't the smartest girl in the class. I had to work to get my grades. And so I think with that, it was positive because I wanted to be at that level. But I think that what there really needs to be a focus on now is just instilling confidence in young women, and also, making them believe in themselves. And I think that is one thing, one barrier to me, again, like you guys, is the confidence aspect of it, which is definitely something. I don't know how to instill it, but some sort of
yeah, absolutely. I think it is so important. And I think, some of the things we've discussed this evening, perhaps, encouraging those all-female groups at school, I think, it's so easy to bounce off the other people around you. And hopefully that sort of thing could inspire further confidence. Amazing. Thanks for such great answers. And in fact, whilst I'm here, I thought, shall I ask if anybody in the audience would like to ask a question live to our panel this evening? If you do, you can just raise your hand on the Zoom function. Oh, fab, we've got some questions coming through already. Shachita, do you want to ask your question? I can allow you to talk there. Can you hear us? Is that okay?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to ask, so I'm head of Key Stage 5 for maths at my school, sixth form, and we're trying to get more girls, number one, coming onto further maths from GCSE, and the second thing, applying for STEM degrees. However, we've noticed, because we have quite a large ethnic minority group, we noticed that from their family backgrounds, there's a little bit of resistance to allowing women to pursue such degrees and careers, because families don't necessarily always see the chance for their daughters to be successful. And what are the starting points, or how can we start tackling that kind of misconception with families? What's the conversation we can start having with them? That was it. Thank you.
That is an absolutely brilliant question. Richa, do you want to perhaps give your opinion on that?
I'm going to try, but I think, as Deepa said, I think I was slightly in a more privileged position on that front, because I had a lot of support from my family on that. But if I had to guess, and I think one thing that has worked. So I started after I finished my engineering. I took a year out and worked in a diesel engine plant, like a proper manufacturing plant. And so we had two sides. We had a shop floor, and we had the design side of it, where the engineer sat. And we had these open days, which was basically, it was in Darlington. We had some open days where people could come in and they could take a tour of the shop floor and the tour of the offices and see how the things are built. It is really odd. Everyone who went through the shop floor just thought that is it. That is what we did as engineers. And when you have like a broken down sort of coffee machine, they put up a sticker which says like waiting for the engineer to come. And I don't think at that point there were a lot of people who went through and experienced it, understood there is another side to it, which is like the design side of it, which you don't have to be on, like working on the plant. It's a completely different. For me, it was a completely opposite thing. I always thought of engineers as being in an office, sat down, building stuff. When I went on the shop floor, it was the first time I ever realized they didn't have a women's toilet, for example, there. Because they never had a woman working there. It was a very odd thing, because I had to walk like a kilometer off every time I needed to use the washroom when I was in the. It's something it never clicked. It was never designed. It was never built. But the best thing I think for me, and just to answer your question, was going into some of these open days with the family. So for example, universities do a lot of open days where you can go along with the, your siblings and your family and all of that. So they also get to see how universities work, how the difference in engineering, for example, Sheffield University used to do open days with the parents, and they could see the facilities and that they could ask questions as well. So I would encourage them to go sort of more as a group effort than just targeting it at, the children, but targeting it at the entire sort of extended family.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Ella, did you want to say something? I see.
I completely agree with everything that Richa was saying. And I think it is a problem. I see it in schools as well. No matter how much you talk to the students and you inspire them, encourage them to go to subject, if they go home and their parents are saying, oh no, you wouldn't suit that, don't worry about it, it undoes all the work that you do. So I think it's really great that you've highlighted this straight away. What I would, recommend would be to have like parents only evenings to sort of explore what opportunities that they wouldn't be aware of, because they're not going to school and they're not being brought to their awareness of what STEM's like and what opportunities, what female role models we got out there at the moment. But also in those sessions to sort of make sure the stereotypes not being brought home. So even I remember a teacher explaining to me that they had a girl who was really passionate about maths and she loved it, but when she went home, even though her mum was like an accountant or something, she was like, oh, dad helps with the maths homework. No, let's shred that stereotype. Mum can help as well. And so naturally, the girl was like, oh, well, I don't think that, you know, women do maths. It's like your mum's an accountant. So make sure that we maybe have parent only evenings. If we send out resources home, we've got some fantastic websites and, you know, YouTube channels and Twitter channels and anything that you can send home to the parents, and they can do their research as well. But you're absolutely right to target them, because they are a key to this chain as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for such great answers. And thank you so much to Tita for such a great question. And like I said, we obviously have that specific InvestIN resource pack. And, you know, why not send it home to the parents, get them to fill out the activities and you guess the statistics and things like that. I'm sure they don't know the answers either. But yeah, that's been so great. And actually, Charlotte, I wondered if I could come to you. I wondered what actually inspired you to go into a STEM industry.
Yeah, sure. So I kind of see science a little bit. Often it's taught as a subject. It's just like information. And it took a lot of work to get my head around like the fact that it's more than just that. And I think that kind of is also answering the previous question around parenting, showing what you can do with that information. And it's more of like an approach, like problem solving, and it's a mindset. And I kind of went through school and I realized that's how my brain naturally works. It's much more logical, and that's kind of really appealed to me. So I kind of gradually went that direction. And then I just really liked understanding like how stuff worked. So doing biochemistry, I wanted to understand like the nitty gritty behind how all of the things in your body come together and how they work. And then I've applied that same sort of mindset into food. So understanding how all your ingredients, like the functionality of them in packaging, what all the different polymers and chemistry and things like that behind it. So I think maybe people don't naturally make that leap behind the kind of the thought process and actually then where that could take you. So I think that's really important to make that connection if people aren't doing it themselves, to help them make that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I think only the other day, Ella and I were talking about how those How Stuff Works YouTube channels are so fascinating.
Yeah, they're so good.
And you can watch them for hours and hours. Like, it is so interesting to think about what actually goes on behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and deeper, this is a bit of a tricky one. I am sorry, but we've had a question come through that says, do you think that being taught by a male teacher impacts girls to be doing STEM in the future?
Oh gosh, I think it's the way the male teacher teaches, if that makes sense. And I think it's the way he comes across. I mean, if it's a misogynistic man, you know, then of course, but like, I think that I genuinely think that now people are way more aware of what to say, what not to say, how to teach, and equality, gender equality particularly. I mean, at school, would I say that, you know, encouraged me to go into STEM industry? No, not at all. I don't think whether I had a man teaching me or a woman teaching me, it swayed me either way. You know, you take a lot from each person. And, you know, with you girls, you know, Ella, I was listening to your talk earlier, it's so inspiring. And I think having women in, you know, who have done so much, who have, you know, broken all these barriers, is very empowering, and that's the inspiring aspect to it. So yes, I think in that respect, yes, but having male teachers teach me, no, I don't think it makes a difference to me, but having more inspiring female teachers is also a good thing as well, and talks. And I think communities, like you said, like groups at school that you can sort of turn to, mentors, so you don't feel alone or isolated, and there is somebody to, you know, you can speak to achieve what you want, and believe in that you can achieve anything you want to set your mind to do. I don't know how to answer that, but
no, that was I think that was a pretty great answer. Ella, did you want to add something? I know you've just unmuted.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add, I completely agree with Deepa. So I don't think it off-put me at all. If anything, I talked about my IT teacher during my speech, and being male, I think when he was talking to me about career progression and where I wanted to go and stuff, he was so sort of aware that I couldn't relate to him, that bless him, he did like so much research, and he was the one who put up all these role models, and he was like, look, you could be like her, you could do this. And because he felt like he couldn't relate, he was actually giving me so much resource and material, and because of him that I was like, oh my God, I'm going to completely do STEM, change the world, this is so cool. So I really think they can use it to their advantage, and it doesn't, coming from a panelist of female engineers and STEM participants, like we're coming from the education system, we're saying that it doesn't impact us.
Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, sometimes maybe teachers don't realize the impact that they can have. I have so much to be thankful for my teachers, for 100% for where I am today. And, you know, they're so inspiring, so engaging, so willing to help. And it's just about fostering that kind of view and getting that across in the STEM industries as well. So yeah, I fully agree with you.
I also think that with teachers as well, the ones that will always stand out to me are those that were positive encouragement and positive reinforcement, those that said, go for it, do it, or don't worry about this, like let's, you didn't do so well in this exam, let's figure out what went wrong and you'll do better next. The encouraging ones are the ones I'll always remember, and the ones that, you know, made me believe in myself and made me believe that the next time I sit this exam, I'll nail it, like I can do it, you know. And I think that was what, you know, stands out to me when I look at teachers, and I remember the teachers from when I was at school.
Absolutely. It's all about that positive narrative that we've been speaking about. It's like you were listening. And just before we wrap up then, I wondered if I could come across to each of you and maybe ask for one final piece of advice that you might give to a teacher in this scenario. So a teacher trying to inspire their students into those STEM industries. Charlotte, if I come to you first, is that okay?
Yeah, of course. So I think the message that I would really think we should be landing to students is kind of the versatility of the industry. I think it shows just by kind of the breadth on the panel this evening. And I didn't know about the existence of my job before I happened to kind of stumble across it. So I think really showing what the possibilities are, and actually like the creativity that can come with that as well. It's not just sitting in a lab, or it's not just being in a factory. There's a huge range of approaches that you can use in the STEM career. So I think that versatility is really important to share.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And Richa, what about you? What would be your final piece of advice?
I feel like I'm going to plagiarize and Charlotte's going to tell me off for it. But, you know, like I just said before, sometimes some of the professions we are in don't have the word engineer written on it, or, you know, that doesn't mean that they are not STEM. So, you know, the engineer is not only the guy or girl who comes and fixes the coffee machine. It's, you know, it's so much more to that. So I think, like you said, in the computer science, the young science program, there's stuff like digital forensics and, you know, incident response, cybersecurity. All of these are quite new topics that, to be honest, you probably don't qualify in any one thing within university and in school, but it still kind of stems from like the learning of science and data. So I think it's about giving them the information that this is a very growing and very kind of evolving field. It's very interesting. I mean, I'm very biased, but I'm studying law right now, and I do think I still prefer engineering.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, and they are growing industries, and it's just about increasing that visibility. And Deepa, what about you? What would be your final piece of advice?
I think echoing with what these girls have said already is just raising awareness. So like more career days. So say if one of your students is interested in, you know, AI or coding or things like that, like we're all such connected people. Like there is someone we know that may be doing it. So for example, if somebody's interested in finance, then, you know, I'm sure as a teacher, you have a friend of a friend of a friend who might, you know, be happy to speak to the student. So just creating that one-to-one sort of relationship. I know it's very difficult when you have a classroom of 25, 30 people to do it for everybody individually. But firstly, I think an easier thing to do would be having more careers days and, you know, really, really showing what each career is about and different elements of it, and two, if you can take it one level up, then within your own class and within your own students that you guys look after, try and like help them reach out to the specific person, or put them in touch with someone, or find someone within your family or friend network. I know it's difficult, but if we really try hard, there is someone we'll know that works in an industry that the student may be interested in. So it's always good to have that one-to-one relationship and conversation.
Absolutely, it's that 6 degrees of separation idea,
Absolutely.
isn't it? We all know someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, amazing. And Ella, coming to you then, just to finish off, what would be your final piece of advice? Are you given a lot of it?
All the points are so good. I would say to summarize all those points, which were all so valid, I would bring get curious and get brave to the table. So you want all your students to go, regardless of whether there's any role models or any relatable figures in that particular division of STEM, you want them to go and do it anyway. And I think we want to instill like that curiosity, that bravery of someone to go out and find what they want to do. We're so lucky that we have a huge amount of resource that people can go out and do their own research and find out exactly what Charlotte's amazing job is doing. Like they research that and think, oh my God, that could be for me. And it starts with that curiosity. And if, like I said, there isn't someone in that role, if there wasn't anyone at McLaren with that materials role, there wasn't many women at McLaren as well, but that didn't hinder me from applying. I just wanted to go and prove them wrong. And I think that's kind of that bravery we want to instill with young students, not to overwhelm them, but also curiosity as well.
No, absolutely. And all these girls, these women, any student, they have that behind them. We just need to push them in the right direction. But that has been so insightful. Thank you so much. I feel like I've learned so much. I feel so empowered and ready to carry on. But before all of you log off for this evening, it would be great if you could just head back to Slido and provide some feedback. The poll has now gone live on the website. And if you just head to the polling tab, it's that same code that we've used before, Women in STEM. And we really value your opinions. We'd love to hear about your experience or any future events you'd like to see from us. They are created especially for you, so we'd love it if you could take the time to leave some comments. But thank you so much for joining us this evening. I have honestly loved every single minute and found it all so valuable, and I hope you all have too. I hope you all enjoy the remainder of your evening. Again, thank you for giving up your time, and I look forward to seeing you all at our next teacher event.